So, hello everyone, welcome to this international seminar. There is no sound, unfortunately. Just 1 second, please. We have here with us the Executive Vice President of the Euroamerica Foundation, Ángel Durandez. Can you briefly explain us what the Euroamerica Foundation does? It's a European organization, a non-profit organization. The speaker apologizes. The microphone will work now. It's 6 in the evening in Madrid right now. Thank you for staying connected throughout the world. We've been talking about energy transition for the whole day, and now we are going to talk about European aid for internationalization in Latin America. We have a panel chaired by the Executive Vice President of the Euroamerica Foundation. It is a European organization, a non-profit organization, pluralist and independent organization that serves the general interest with the aim to encourage cooperation and understanding between institutions, companies in Europe and in Latin America to promote relationships between the public and the private sector. Thank you, Begoña, and thank you to all of you that are here in the room, as well as to all of you that are connected through streaming. I'm a bit more senior than you all. I hope you don't mind if I address you cordially. Today, we are going to celebrate an important session. I should have started by saying good evening, Europe, and good morning or good afternoon, Latin America. In any case, as Begoña said a few seconds ago, is talk about European aid for those companies that wish to invest in Latin America or for Latin American companies that need investment capacity. This aid program is for technology and knowledge transfer, while developing at the same time value-added relationships between low-carbon companies in the European Union and companies that are seeking circular economy solutions in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia. We will be referring to these countries throughout the session. There's a specific project that is being implemented in Mexico and Canada. Our objectives are a sustainable transition to a circular economy and a low-carbon economy among companies, and to internationalize companies by supporting sustainability in Latin America. We always use the same vocabulary: sustainability, low-carbon economy, and sometimes I find it hard to use all these new vocabulary, but I'm becoming an expert like the rest of us. So the director of the program in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia, Mercedes Vasquez, will be talking to us about the program in those countries as well as in Mexico. So, Mercedes, if it's fine with you, you look great, by the way. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mercedes? Is it working? Can you hear me, Mercedes? Can you please fix that? Now it's working. Now it's working. Welcome. It's great to see you on the screen. You look great. I'll introduce the rest of the speakers and pose a few questions. So, without further ado, let me introduce the National Association of Energy Services, ANESE. We have Javier Martinez Belotto with us today, who is in charge of sustainable funding. ANESE is an association made of 100 companies with a mission to promote energy efficiency and sustainability. ANESE focuses on mitigating climate change, covering the last mile, modernizing the use of energy by end users. The last mile is a key concept. ANESE promotes synergies between its partners and promotes its interests with public and private companies. We have two case studies of two European companies that have offices in Latin America, and they will tell us about their energy projects in Latin America. We have here with us Ángel Bautista, Director of Institutional Relations at Repsol. As you all know, Repsol is a global provider that promotes energy transition with less emissions. Repsol is developing several renewable energy projects, photovoltaic energy, in many countries. Repsol wishes to be a zero-emission company in 2050, and since 2016 it's had a circular economy that is applied to raw material and to the delivery of products and services. On the other hand, we have José Luis López Schumer, who is Chief Representation Officer for Spain, Portugal, and Latin America at Mercedes-Benz. We all wish to have a Mercedes car, but not all of us can afford such a car. In any case, Mercedes-Benz has or is committed to sustainability. Mercedes has claimed that it is going to do a lot of progress in terms of sustainability. The company wants to provide sustainable mobility. There are key players in the field of transformation that can provide aggregated value in terms of the environment and also for society as a whole. Then we have another case study of a European company, Spanish company, that is going to implement a European project, a low-carbon project for projects to be implemented in Chile. We want to know how European aid is applied at a practical level. This company makes mirrors to create energy fields in the solar energy sector. Oscar Balboa will be on the screen in a while, and I'm going to break the ice with a round of questions to Mercedes and to the speakers that are here with me. So ladies first. Mercedes, please. The low carbon business action, how does it support businesses in the Americas and in the European Union? We have around 5 or 7 minutes for each reply. Mercedes, the floor is yours. Thank you and welcome. I'd like to thank Madrid Platform and the Europeas Foundation for having this opportunity to present this program. This program is funded by the European Commission. It is fully aligned with the principles and values of the European Green Deal. In practice, it is a business platform to facilitate marketing of low-carbon solutions between European companies and partner companies in Argentina, Chile, and Colombia. This project has also been implemented simultaneously in Mexico and Canada. IDO Consultoría is in charge of implementing the project as well. It is a 3-year program. It will be finished in 2023. On the one hand, in Europe, we are working with SMEs and different companies that provide solutions, devices, technology, and associated services that are requested by local players in their markets. The participation criteria to be involved in the program are the following. Companies must not have over 500 people working for them. We are working also with divisions within companies such as the Renewable Energies Division. And companies, of course, have to be duly implemented in their countries and respect all regulations and provide clean energy in order to access these programs. Most companies are mid-caps, SMEs, and for Latin American companies, there are no restrictions. We offer services that are free of charge in order to promote international development. We constantly map the sectors in which clean energies are applied, and our local teams get in touch with their different stakeholders, and they are in charge of looking for the key players in order to consolidate the presence of European companies in Latin American countries. Once companies are identified in order to participate in the program, we submit projects to European companies who will benefit from different opportunities in the field of waste management, biomass, renewable technology, renewable energy, recycling solutions for different fields. European companies get access to a pipeline of projects in Latin America, and there is a close follow-up in all these internationalization process so that businesses can work on both sides of the Atlantic, and partners that have set up a partnership or an association can access to the technical services that we provide free of charge. These services are absolutely key in order to check that technology to be applied is feasible in all countries. We draft different studies, feasibility studies, market research studies, because, of course, very often countries need to prove that a specific solution will be viable through some specific companies. We also draft legal studies to see the legal framework, if a project can be applied or not. We also provide advice for joint ventures between different companies, especially in Brazil. For example, in order to enter the Brazilian market, you need to prove that there is nothing similar in the Brazilian market. And we have a lot of knowledge to provide to local players. And we get a lot of knowledge from local players as well. And thanks to our knowledge, all costs are reduced. And then we also advise on how to get funding. There are great projects worth millions of euros that need funders, banks, and therefore we provide consulting services so that companies can access credit in Europe and in Latin America. So we provide technology screening services and other services so that projects are successful on both sides of the ocean.
Much, Mercedes, for that. I don't know if we have on the screen or Oscar Balboa, but I wanted to ask Oscar a question. Is Oscar Balboa out there? Here we are. Hello, Oscar. Good afternoon. Very happy to see you on the screen and to have you here with us. Oscar, I wanted to ask you a question. What are the benefits of the aid from the low carbon business action program? You've in real time had this experience. Could you share those experiences with us, please? Yes, of course. When we initiated the contacts with the bank, we did a pilot in the north of Chile for a mining company. This was a pilot that has a solar field, about 500 square meters, about 400 kilowatts of power. Now, according to the studies being done in the mine, these piles respond very well to get the copper, to mine the copper when these are hot. So that's why we use these solar panels. So we wanted to see what aid was available, and we saw how we could fit these this aid that would be earmarked basically for the commercial part. This helps us to penetrate the market and reduce part of the costs and become familiar with these technologies in the north of Chile, where the yield, the is high due to the tremendous energy in the desert in the north. Now, we have been able to change, and we've initiated the decarbonization path. All of renewables, remember, have an enemy, despite the fact that more and more people and companies are interested in being green. This has a cost. And there is where we can find some handicaps in the decarbonization process. Now here, this is the economic area where European funds managed by GSMA can help to introduce technology in the field to favor decarbonization. For the time being, the sector isn't very familiar with these, with the way the system works, and these are benchmarks in the sector. Therefore, we have to remember that while we're moving towards the decarbonization, it's very important to reinforce support and aid so that more and more projects can be executed to decarbonize the environment. And often, like in our case, different aids are used, or aid from different entities with different scopes and objectives and amounts. But all of these have an impact on the purpose, which is bringing projects to fruition. So when there are more and more projects, and I think we all know very well that the best way for technology to seep into the industry is with practical examples, success cases. Many companies are interested, but they really don't know what technologies can be applied. And sometimes they mistrust these types of technologies. And so we have to see what the scope is, economic and so forth. So it's important to have industrial and pilot projects able to convince and offer people the possibility of these types of projects for the decarbonization. Thanks very much, Oscar, for that. We're going to be back with you in just a few minutes. Javier Martinez Belloto, I wanted to ask you, what are the main indicators to make energy transmission in Europe possible? And in Spain, how will the law against climate change affect all of this? Well, thanks very much, and thanks for the invitation, and Angel for the presentation you made. I think that Oscar and Martinez mentioned this. They were talking about the Green Deal. They talked about the decarbonization, and to maybe talk a little bit about history, all of the indicators pushing us through to energy transition. Everything emerged, or the first seed was the Paris Agreement. We talked a lot about that, and the Paris Agreement seeks that the temperature increase is kept to only 2 degrees. So if we break down all of the different regulations that have come out from different areas in Europe, the main milestone is the Green Deal, signed in 2019. And the goal of that was by 2030 to reduce the tons of emissions by 50%. But just a few months ago in the European Parliament, they raised this objective, and we want to reach 55% reduction of CO2 emissions in Europe. So this is in the macro level, and sustainability all sounds very good. It's in vogue, but we have to apply it. And now we have the climate change law, and there are countries in Europe that are taking stronger measures than the Climate Act in Spain. I read in the press that France, just last week, is going to prohibit all of the air routes if there's a train that can replace it. So that's marking the path. It's not just the companies, but it's also the citizens that need to take action. In terms of European regulation, there's an important point, is taxonomy. They're talking a lot about the taxonomy. And what is it? Well, that's regulation that is marking the path for investment funds, for banks, and is moving towards what investment is sustainable and what is not sustainable investment. And next year, a lot of importance will be given to these banking institutions and investment funds. Now, at national level, examples that we can extrapolate to other European countries and other Latin American countries are, for example, the obligation in Spain, large companies that have more than 250 employees or that have a turnover of more than 50 million euros must do energy audits, for example. Recently, just a few years ago, the law changed on public sector contracts, and they're introducing obligations so that all of the tenders have sustainable criteria included in them, in the award criteria. So these are steps forward, and in Spain the most important is the Climate Change Act that recently was passed in Congress, and this week possibly it will be passed in the Senate. And this establishes ambitious objectives, for example, energy efficiency improvement at national level by 40% by 2030. And by 2030, the electricity system in Spain must have 75% renewable energy. And what we find is that all of these indicators really require local laws. Energy rehabilitation. The government has established an objective of renewing 300,000 homes per year to make them more efficient and to reduce consumption. Therefore, I could continue with more indicators, but this clearly is something clear. At the end of that, the result of that seed at the Paris Agreement that seemed very macro for 2016, back in 2016, now we are implementing it in the short term, and we now have indicators and local laws and initiatives that are going to implement that, and it's going to have an important impact on the global economy. Let's move on. Everything has to do with climate change is really a passion of mine. We're going to move on now to business. Angel Bautista. Repsol is the #1 company in the gas company in the world, and announced its commitment to being zero net emissions in 2050. How are you going to address that transformation to achieve that goal? Well, first, Angel, thanks very much for the invitation and Madrid platform and to the America Foundation. I think you do exceptional work in this transatlantic bridge, not just the United States and Europe, it's also especially Latin America and Spain. Spain and Spanish companies have to play an important role here, and a lot of interesting discussion has come up here. And I think I'll talk something about regulation, which I think is one of the topics covered in this discussion. But regulation can condition decarbonization in a more efficient and a quicker way, depending on how it's implemented. Angel, the first thing is I'm convinced. Sometimes the word sustainability is overused, but with the Paris Agreement, Repsol was the first to do this back in 2005 to talk about reduction. In 2012, we established something that was very novel. That was a tool. And all the operators in our refineries and our chemical plants and all employees, part of their salary was conditioned to reduce emissions. In their small operations, it's not the same to say, I'm optimizing the amount of oxygen in the process and go home and say I'm fighting against climate change. This was something that was basic and has allowed us in our industrial plants in Spain to reduce by 5 million tons per year our emissions. Just to give you an idea, It's like putting 7 or 8 million electrical vehicles on the highway. So the most important thing and our aspiration, what is clear in our strategic plan is these intermediate milestones and traceability. It's more difficult to meet some of our milestones that we've established. And in terms of credibility, we also did something else that was very novel, and that was not only decrease the emissions of our plants and processes, but also of our products, technically called Scope 3, which and to decarbonize not only how we make the products, but in the products themselves. So I would like to say that in the decarbonization, it has to be complete. Sometimes we have a piecemeal vision, but electrical renewables is very important. And that has to be analyzed because still the electrical sector is still 25% of the emissions come from the electric sector, but there is technology out there now that is achieving efficiencies to decarbonize the sector. But we have to continue to decarbonize agriculture, 24%, industry, 21% of emissions, and many processes are not, we can't electrify, decarbonize transport. And we talked about the issue of the airplanes in France, but what is also true is that the traditional sources of energy has brought a lot of well-being to the planet, and we can't decarbonize without maintaining that well-being. So we have to look for the way to decarbonize as quickly as possible, as much as possible, but in the most efficient way possible to not lose well-being. And to do that, we need technology. We need a lot of technology. There's not just one solution that's going to work for everything, because there are things that we can electrify, and there's other things where we need to look for other alternative methods. And here, what Repsol is going to do for zero net emissions by 2050 is, well, two basic tools it's going to use. The first is to enlarge its portfolio, use low-carbon technologies, use renewables, and which are efficient and compete very well with traditional energies. But what we also have to do is look at the other technological routes that allow us to decarbonize as a complement. So other energy uses that we have where renewable electricity can't reach quickly enough to reach the goals, the Paris goals. So we're quite proud in our technology center in Madrid. We have 250 researchers there working, and in all of these technological routes. Basically, what are we going to do? Well, of course, we're going to continue looking for greater efficiencies. Energy efficiency has to be an obsession. We've reduced 5 million tons of emissions in our industrial plants. We're going to continue to reduce another 800,000 tons. And when I talk about regulation, there are countries that are going to position themselves very well in reducing and using CO2. We think that the capture and use of CO2, as long as the regulation allows us, we can start to take out tons of CO2 from the atmosphere and use it. And I'll talk a little bit about hydrogen. We can generate renewable hydrogen, put it together with the CO2 that we've captured from the atmosphere, and make synthetic hydrocarbons that we've captured. Therefore, we have examples of how we can decarbonize products that could then be used by our vehicles tomorrow without having to create new infrastructures, and that wouldn't have to be, or they don't have to be antagonistic to the electrification of transport. They can compete with the electricity, and as of tomorrow, they can also contribute to the combating climate change. And also, we're the greatest supplier of electricity for electrical vehicles. We're going to work on that, and in addition to our low carbon generation, and of course, the circular economy is extremely important, and it will help us to create this decarbonized products. We just invested 200 million euros in a plant of biofuels in Cartagena, where it's in Spain with technology that we have in Spain, and basically it's taking the waste, all of our own waste, and transform that waste in hydrocarbons, not oil products, it's in hydrocarbons. So we're going to convert, Angel, that you know more than the upstream from Repsol, we're going to change that into, instead of importing oil, we're going to convert that into, convert the fields themselves, the dumps themselves, in hydrocarbons. And this is really a top-level technology and generates a lot of employment. Decarbonization in Spain we can do that generating more industry as long as we have a European or Spanish framework that allows us to to deal with these investments. Biomethane, biogas, and using renewable energies. Right now it's not competitive, but it could be competitive in the future with the correct electricity prices and so forth. But Repsol has a technological project that we're going to test in Puerto Llano in the south of Madrid, and we're testing this in our center, which is called photocatalysis. And this is doing electrolysis, but do it directly. So we save all of that process that is inefficient of having to use the solar plant and so forth. Will we achieve it? I don't know, but that's what we're focusing on now, and these are things that we're doing. In terms of mobility, we believe in both platforms, in electrification and decarbonization of the liquid fuels. We think both should compete on an equal footing. They should be both part of the solution, and they serve for light transport and also to decarbonize the maritime transport, to decarbonize air transport, and plants. The Cartagena plant reduces emissions by 900,000 tons a year, just those products. And this is like a whole a field of like 180,000 football fields of trees. So there's a lot, with a lot of humility we're working, but we're really looking at science and technology. And we have a portfolio that combines the efficient energies with others that we're working on, and a lot of commitment.
We could be talking about this for hours today and many more days. You talked about mobility. So now I would like to give the floor to José Luis and ask him about the challenges to be faced by the car industry in the coming years. I would also like to thank the Fundación Euroamérica. I think your work is absolutely great. Many changes are being applied in recent times. Some people say youngsters do not want to drive a car. That might be true somewhere. But in the 50s, everybody wanted to drive a car, and 50 million cars were made every year. And now that nobody wants to drive a car, 100 million cars are made every year. So there is more and more middle class, and all this has to be combined with a low carbon economy. We are changing our objective. We do not want to make cars only. We want to provide mobility as well. The world is going to change. Car makers have been in charge of the value chain. We would make diesel engines and other types of engines. We would make our cars in our factories. We were in charge of distribution chains. We had access to funding, but all this is going to change due to the electrification of the sector and due to the changes that will be applied in the coming 15 or 20 years. We have this new concept of connected cars. The ownership of the car is going to change as well. Circular economy will be applied to cars. In Madrid, we have a service called Car2Go, electrified vehicles, low-emission vehicles, and autonomous cars. All these 4 blocks are going to be the core part of the sector in the coming years. Regulation will also be important. The European Union has established a level of emissions of 95 grams of CO2, 37% percentage in 2030. Just to give you an idea, 3 liters is the average consumption of the vehicle fleet, and therefore we need to have many low emission vehicles. This is on the part of regulation. The European Parliament, the European Commission, some countries have more ambitious goals than others. Then we have the role of regional governments, such as in the case of Spain. We have this area restricted to traffic in Madrid called Madrid Central in order to avoid emissions, and all these initiatives are being applied in many different cities. But what do customers want? We have 20 or 30 new models of electrical cars every year on the market. The market share for electrical cars is increasing in so many places, and we have to consider that all our approach is customer-centered. Infrastructure is also absolutely key. We've been controlling the value chain for 130 years. We've set up so many gas stations throughout Europe and throughout the whole world, and now we have much less time in order to set up charging stations through gas, hydrogen, or whatever fuel we want to provide for cars. This is going to entail huge investments, and public and private collaboration is absolutely key. We will also see new stakeholders, new partnerships. If we ask young people about the car of the future, they would think about an Apple car or a Google car. Therefore, we find new players in the market and new ways of working. Not long ago, I was told about experiments of escalators in the cities in order to go from one place to another, or using drones to deliver products. In any case, electrified vehicles has to be a reality. Of course, conventional vehicles will coexist until in 2050. Perhaps the European Union will eliminate them. We will have pluggable hybrid vehicles and all types of solutions. I can talk about the Spanish situation in a while, if you like. In terms of infrastructure, we have to consider many challenges. We have doing progress for 100 years. Cars that pollute much less. And now there is a paradigm shift because we are going towards new models. Car sharing, the cost of batteries has to decrease as well. There are many car factories due to the new trend we see in many Asian countries. Lithium batteries, there are few producers in Europe. Most of them are in China or in Japan, and this entails different costs. If an electric battery costs 30,000 euros and a conventional battery costs 15,000 euros, that is going to have an impact on sales. And therefore, we need to talk about the consequences of the decisions that are made at the political level. Different countries will have different interests, such as Germany or Austria. Battery recycling is also an important aspect. In Spain, electricity is produced in part or partially through renewable energies, which is not the case in Poland, for example. What about the regulation of taxes to be applied to different technologies? What happens in the case of hydrogen? Technology neutrality is an important topic in Spain. How much time do I have available? And then we have the concept of connected vehicles, which is going to provide great business opportunities in Europe, in Latin America, and worldwide. The growth of connected vehicles accounts for 50%. Some people think of connected vehicles as a big mobile phone. We already have car makers that provide a lot of different possibilities for vehicles and a lot of information on vehicles. There is online diagnosis of vehicles for car repairs, for preventative maintenance, for servicing the car. Driving styles, pay as you drive, forensic reports, agreements with parking companies, payment of tolls. You will be able to pay from your car. E-payments. There will be a sort of Netflix for cars. You will be able to connect the alarm in your home. There will be so many apps developed around vehicles, payments of fines, warnings, medical information, your heartbeat. And then we have another reality a bit further ahead, which is the autonomous car. No drivers, no professional drivers. If there are no professional drivers, what will insurance companies do? Will they be useful or not? Imagine discounts for insurance policies for these cars. A Dutch guy would tell me not long ago, "You're used to selling a lot of cars." And I told them, well, there are around 300,000 employees in the car industry here. So why don't we try to find employment for them in the sector with the changes that are coming with the new technology? 57 million moves are made every day in Spain by car, and this can be done by having a vehicle only when you need it instead of owning a vehicle. Never before have we had these four components at the same time, which will be here in the next 10, 15 years. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think we could talk about these topics for hours and on end. And now I would like to ask Mercedes. Mercedes, can you hear me? Great. A second round of questions for you. What commercial opportunities have you seen in the markets in which you're working, and which are the key sectors that you're recommending European businesses to expand? Well, we have teams of local people very well prepared in each one of the countries in which we work, both in Latin America and in Europe. And we are mapping technology constantly. We are always in touch with different companies, technology companies, in order to see in which sectors there is opportunity to buy technology. Low carbon strategies apply to different sectors, and we have to consider greenhouse gases, like our colleague said from Mercedes and Volkswagen. We have some criteria in order to establish priorities. We have a project for low carbon systems in the coming years. We want people to buy and have access to the relevant technology. There are two general directors of the European Union for the competitiveness of European companies, and then the Director General for the climate change policies in the European Union. We do not only focus on greenhouse emissions, because there are other criteria that have to be considered. We need to have a favorable environmental impact in each one of our projects. As Oscar said, we have a pilot project in Brazil and Mexico, and we have carried out an impact assessment. We have energy indicators, renewable energy indicators, energy saving indicators, waste management indicators, recycling of waste. And in our projects, we also consider pollution, not only by carbon dioxide, but also pollution by methane, for example. So, several criteria have to be fulfilled, and then commitments to decarbonize sectors, then we need to know the specific regulation or legislation that applies to each sector. And we need to know the different policies applied by governments. And then we need to know the purchasing power of companies in Latin America, because companies have to have enough money to buy technology, and European technology has to be paid in in euros. So it's not so easy sometimes. So there has to be a business opportunity, and then companies have to be well positioned as compared to other competitors. So we are identifying companies and sectors, such as, for example, well, we could talk about this for hours on end, but each sector is huge. But for example, energy efficiency, carbon capture and storage, transportation, cogeneration, photovoltaic energy, geothermal energy, biomass, methane, biodiesel, waste collection and management, low carbon agriculture, forestry, elimination of wastelands, waste management, and better technology for energy efficiency. We are focused on all these different sectors, and treatment of water through water plants. As you can see, there is a whole world to be explored, but we have a methodology in order to establish criteria and to know on which sectors we should focus. For example, in Argentina, there are many energy efficiency projects. We have specific technology that can be imported for refrigeration systems, cooling systems, waste management systems. There are opportunities for European companies. In the case of biogas, there are different machines to be used and technology. There are many opportunities. Solar energy is a big opportunity. We need investors for high efficiency solutions, wind energy, batteries, maintenance of the network. In the case of biogas, there are so many components that provide an opportunity. Electric transportation, Mercedes-Benz. We find opportunities in the field of charging stations, specific cables. The list is absolutely huge. There are so many opportunities in Chile as well. In Chile, the legal framework is very favorable for the circular economy in order to recycle plastics, tires, and the use of biomass in order to generate fuel for heating purposes, autonomous forests. And then we have Colombia. Colombia has a great potential. Colombia is a country that is making a transition towards renewable energies. People talk more and more about renewable energy, batteries, waste management systems, reactors are needed, management of urban wastewater management as well, and then smart agriculture requires technology, European technology, competitive technology, surveillance systems to prevent fires, wildfires, drones, biofertilizers. There are so many opportunities. And this is what we're working on. I'm sure that all my colleagues are familiar with everything I said, so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Javier, as representative of ENG, what initiatives do you have in sustainable financing or sustainable projects are your associates doing in Latin America and in Europe? Thanks very much for the question. Now, just to set the context, in ENG, most of the companies are energy services companies. So ENG, I'm going to be talking a lot about the ESIs. These are top level, top echelon countries, Repsol, Acciona, and we're starting to also talk about sustainable financing. This is a reality that this all sector is generating a tremendous interest in these types of projects, renewable energy, efficient energy, and over the past several years, well, it used to be an association of these companies. Now we have strategic partners in the association, which are banks and investment funds. Deutsche Bank, BBVA, and others have shown interest in this world. Now, why? Because at the end of the day, sustainable financing is obliging them to finance in these types of projects. Now, to bring this all down to earth, they were talking about some renewable energy projects. I want to focus on the projects that we work on in Europe and in Latin America. These are major or big companies, and we have projects in all types of sectors: the public sector, private sector, industrial, private industrial sector, offices, buildings. Now, just to give you a practical example, here in this building, it's an emblematic building in the city of Madrid. And as you can imagine, we have energy consumption for air conditioning, lighting, ventilation, very important today with COVID. And this generates an expense, consumes energy. So what do these companies do? Well, they do an energy diagnosis, a snapshot of where the energy consumption is in the building, and seek to save energy. Also, by contract, these companies guarantee savings. According to the observatory, these guarantees are around between 25 and 30% energy savings, and therefore we have projects that need investment. Maybe we have to change the type of lighting, the air conditioning system, renew the ventilation system. So these are projects that require investment, and they're the muscle of the financial institutions is important. These companies without banks couldn't exist. Therefore, we have a full ecosystem in the association. This is an example of the tertiary sector, the public sector, where we're coming up with a lot of energy efficiency projects, like changing all of the lighting in the streets of the cities, and include that technological component. And we can add what we're calling smart cities now. Smart cities really is just an energy efficiency project, and what it does is optimize consumption of light, in this case, of street lighting. Another example, these are energy efficiency products, normal ones. Another important example are the high consumption projects and the shared self-supply. This morning we had a talk where they talked about some practical cases, and I was interested in one where it's an industrial park in Catalonia where they brought together, in an industrial park, so they brought together several companies, and what they're doing is in one solar installation, they're sharing that energy that they're producing. So this is another very interesting model. It's a sustainable project that's achieving savings by producing green energy. So we have energy efficiency projects, self-supply, shared self-supply projects, and getting into some detail now. The other day, in a conversation with one of the partners, they said, I asked them, I'm going to be in a conference around this type of projects in Latin America. Tell me a little bit about what you're financing. For example, sustainable projects, energy efficiency projects in Mexico. They're doing a lot of projects. In the hotel sector, there's a large demand for air conditioning. And so they're renewing equipment to save energy. In Colombia and Peru, I was told that the financial institutions are focusing on creating sustainable homes, not only in terms of the climate, but for social housing as well. And he also mentioned that they're introducing green mortgages, because this is a term that's little by little making its way into Spain. And these are mortgages where they lower the interest on the mortgage if the energy rating is high. So again, a very interesting model for sustainable financing. And this is a sustainable project as well. So financing and sustainable projects really go hand in hand. In the Caribbean, they said they're doing a lot of projects in the agricultural sector. In Argentina and Uruguay, energy efficiency programs in the meat industry. And talking with these institutions, the interesting thing that I learned was that all the companies that has a product for export from Latin America to the United States or Latin America to Europe or vice versa, what they're finding is there's a common point that there's a demand on the customer side for sustainable products. And once again, what does that mean? How do we translate that to our everyday world? Well, if you make a product and you export it, the final customer is saying they want the packaging to be biodegradable, or the packaging can be recycled, or that comes from recycled materials. So, for example, the example in Uruguay, in the meat sector, the customer was demanding that the energy used to refrigerate all of the meat and should have a certain percentage of renewable energy going into that electricity. So all companies are finding now that those that are producing products and services for export, there is a demand for sustainable criteria. Very interesting. Angel, last question for you. Some of these projects in this decarbonized world will be financed with European funds. What differential advantage does this type of financing have? Well, this question allows me to connect with some of the things I was saying before. Let's talk, when we talk about sustainable financing in the European Union, the stimulation programs, we're trying to implement these in different countries. And this is in line with the European funds. Incentive for electrifying things in general, that's good. I think it's good to incentivize instead of prohibit. And sustainable financing, I have another issue. Sustainable financing, what I don't understand, we began with the OECD to create a global standard. But it's as if tomorrow the Americans do make their standard, we make our standard, and we're not going to understand each other. So in the fight against climate change, we should be more practical, I think, and less platonic. Now, not with this idealistic vision of the world, but we use finances for decarbonization. And this is something that we can't lose a focus on. European funds, this is a huge opportunity. Very difficult to implement, because I have here my whole list of projects and so forth, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'll talk about, it has to be an important stimulus, which is difficult to dovetail with an economy that needs longer maturation processes to adapt new technology. It's not something we can do from one day to the next. We need to focus on this, but the big investment might take several years, so it'll be difficult to implement. But the big advantage, and I've heard about a lot of very interesting technologies, but I think if there's a trade-off between the financing and the technology. In Repsol, everything that we're going to present for European funding, we would have done it on our own. But what is true, the technology has to mature. Technology has to be scaled up. The plant that we're working on is a pilot plant that would fit in this room. In our technology center, we have to take this to our industrial sector in Puerto Llano and put that in, make it much bigger to see if it works the way it's working in the laboratory. And European funds will help us to accelerate that process. So this will allow us to take a greater technological risk to try to mature technologies that we're going to take several years in becoming commercial. We'll try to lower the risk that these projects have thanks to European funds. We'll have less capital exposure and lower the risk. And here we're talking about technologies that can be exported to Latin America and to other places. And if we do this intelligently, this could be an opportunity to develop European and Spanish technologies that could really help us in the long term. It's difficult to decarbonize, but sometimes it seems like we want to decarbonize by sending these sending a lot of these processes to China or to India, but that's not the case. We need to develop all of these technologies, and Repsol is focusing on these, and these European funds, I think that we can develop them much faster. Public-private collaboration is essential, but we need to reduce the development time. Hydrogen is one of these. Batteries is another one. Energy storage in general, electricity, storage of electricity, not just batteries. And the hydro plants, but there's a lot of different ways that Europe can participate with these funds and industrialize itself, which is something that we really need to do so that the next crisis that comes, we don't know when it'll come, but it will come. We'll be better prepared in terms of strategic reserves, but especially in terms of our industry. And we've lost a lot of industry in Europe, and this is an opportunity now to become more technological and prepare ourselves to be able to export capacity, interesting investment to help the world to decarbonize and to substitute industry, to have more industry. We have the most efficient industry in the world, so we have to have an additional industry to reposition ourselves in the world with cleaner industry. Well, reindustrializing ourselves is a magic word. I love that word. I hope that we can do it. So, José Luis, I'm going to ask you a question as well. Is Spain prepared to deal with these challenges? Well, following up on what Angel was saying, We have to think about what the automobile is in Spain. We know the figures. It accounts for about 10% of employment, just under 9% of the contribution to GDP, 15% of tax collections, 18% of exports, and has a positive balance of 17 billion. It's the number 2 sector. After the food industry, there are 17 car factories in Spain and all over Spain. And right now, we are, and this doesn't happen in many sectors, we're the third most competitive country after Germany and the Czech Republic. So what we said before, when all of these new issues, the connected cars, the shared cars, when all of these become a reality, we did a study in AFAC, and up to 2040, there could be invoicing of more than 300 billion euros produced by cars and mobility just in Spain. So it's much more than it is now. So it's enormous. But to do that, we need to maintain our competitiveness. Spain has to be a competitive country. The vehicles are sold to customers. Customers logically want to pay less for more, and therefore they're going to select those countries that are the most competitive and the most productive. So there's ferocious competition to attract that investment. And Spain has to be in the mix just to maintain the level that we have right now in the world ranking. By 2030, we'd have to manufacture 600,000 electrified vehicles and to be able to sell them both in Spain and export them. So how do you make a country competitive? Well, competitive factors, energy costs, logistic costs, etc., regulatory, human capital. We were talking this morning about the famous labor reform in the automotive industry that has helped a lot. Cars are not made every day. We don't make the same cars. There's different cars. The factories, some have to be closed, others have to be adapted. So we need that flexibility of the environment. We need to live in a country that is flexible. The strength of the external market and the free trade. We have to have markets to export our products. We have to have a strong foreign policy and strength in innovation, which is the weakest point in Spain. We let other people invent things, with certain exceptions, but that is a reality. So I think that we clearly need a national, long-term national industrial plan that goes over and above a political party or an electoral period. We have to think of how to reach that 20% of our weight in GDP for industry and the manufacturers, our central and regional governments, our trade unions, our business organizations. It's essential that we continue to be competitive. And I said before that we could generate about 310 million euros per year in 2040, but this means a lot of investment that we'll have to make. Manufacturers can't do that. There are other operators as well, but the government also has to play a role in that. As I said, the cost, we need the energy, logistics, all of the railway modifications, increase capacity in the trains. We have to increase by 17.5% the reduction in CO2. According to the European regulations by 2030, and this means an increasingly percentage of vehicles need to be electrified, but electrified vehicles need to be charged. Some will be in private homes and others will be on the street or in public areas. So the European Union, and I spoke with the commissioner, said for this to happen, for Spain to be able to comply with its obligations, we need 350,000 charging posts in public places. Right now, last year there was 7,000. We're going to reach 10,000, and it's 2021. So we're talking about very ambitious objectives, but we're not receiving the facilities. Madrid is a little bit more open, but it was very closed to installing these public posts. We're talking about flexibility. It would take months just to get a permit. Other cities like Berlin, they established those post on the street lamps and using induction and so forth. This is all essential because time is going by, and if we don't move quick, we won't be able to comply with that objective, plus everything that has to be done in homes to see if homes have the capacity, the capacities for these quick charging. In terms of education, I always like to mention this. It's absolutely essential. What study plans are in the pipeline? I've never been lucky enough to talk with people in the field of education to see what professions are going to be needed over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think it's essential that education is adapted to the industry with technological studies, scientific studies, to prepare students for these challenges. And technological neutrality, we need to focus on everything you can. As Joe Biden said, you can, if you're able to do this with the technology, fantastic. Don't hold me back. So we need that flexibility. One other things that come out when we talk about in the Chamber of Commerce in Berlin, and they did a survey, and there's 1,000 companies, and the issues that come out frequently in Spain are legal certainty and political stability. They're essential if we want to be competitive and we want to attract investment. Also R&D, of course, batteries, and of course another very important issue is the development of 5G, because Spain could be a big center for autonomous vehicles. We have privileged climate, the latence that 5G allows, and all these things that I'm saying, it can be extrapolated to other countries, production countries as well, that want to be at the head of the industry, like Argentina or Brazil or Mexico, which are also major car producers in the world. But I'd like to insist on this because it's essential. And of the every car manufacturing plant that we lose is a small tragedy, and to win that war, we need to win all of the battles. And so we're going to have to take the steps necessary to keep the industry here.
Thank you very much, José Luis. We have Oscar connected. There is a big lack of knowledge on renewable energy. You provide solar thermal energy in your company. Can you explain us the difference between the thermal solar energy and the photovoltaic energy? And what is the carbon emissions in using your technology? Well, the key difference is the efficiency objective in each of the technologies. These technologies complement each other. We have a project in the desert of Atacama. So the production is 24 hours a day. And that field in Atacama had a photovoltaic field as well that produces during the relevant hours of the day. So we have to consider the efficiency objective. We have big solar fields, and our technology can be used to produce thermal energy with the highest degree of efficiency. Photovoltaic energy has 18% efficiency rate, and in the other case, the efficiency peak accounts for 75%, and therefore the generation values in the case of the photovoltaic energy is 1 megawatt per hectare, and in the other case, the efficiency rate is up to 4 or 5 megawatts. That is 5 times more as compared to the surface used. As Ángel Bautista from Repsol said before, most of the energy is to generate heat for processes. When we talk about industrial heat, we are talking about areas where land is limited and expensive. In other cases, such as in the case of fields for thermal and solar energy, we are talking about areas that are usually not used by the state, and they are provided nearly for free. And as we said before, in order to produce electricity, we have to consider that we have to produce heat through our resistance. And storing thermal energy in water tanks is much cheaper than storing energy in batteries, because batteries are very expensive. Therefore, our system can become more efficient and support our systems better without having to increase too much the investment in the system itself. As regards emissions shifting, the rate is 100%. I'll explain myself. It's 100% considering the support provided to the facilities. Let me explain myself better. We are talking about solar radiation systems, and the sun doesn't shine for the whole day, and the cost would be too high. So we have to strike a balance between the investment that has to be made and the hours of sunlight that the system will be receiving. And the efficiency rate is around 55–60%. The idea is to use less fossil fuels, because in the end we are talking about propane or gas that is not burnt, and if fossil fuels are not burnt, they do not pollute, and that decreases the rates of emissions. We have the figure of 50 euros in Europe, and these figures will increase. Oscar, that was very interesting. I didn't know about that difference. I would like to ask Mercedes. She's the director of the program for Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia. I would like to ask her to draw a conclusion. And I would like to ask you about the results of the first collaborations between European and Latin American projects. Do you have any case study? 3 minutes at the most, please, Mercedes. The project began in September 2020, and we have been hit by the crisis in Latin America. Decision-making has been slow to purchase technology. Investment decisions have been slow. As my colleague said from Repsol, the process is absolutely unstoppable. Commitments have been made, and decisions will be made and applied. We have a portfolio of 60 projects in the pipeline. Some of them are stopped right now, as Oscar said, and then we have a project in Brazil that is about to be implemented, a biogas plant. There is a twofold problem, a financial problem regarding the management of organic waste, expensive process, and then they need to comply with regulations for specific waste management plants. So all this waste will be turned into biogas following a specific process in order to provide electricity for their own facility and for agriculture. And then in Brazil, there is a system of carbon credits. And this is just an example of the 60 projects that we have in our pipeline. We've launched 15 of them on our platform. We have asked for expressions of interests. We are looking for European counterparts. Our projects are also based on European technology. All the information are on our webpage. And Angel, I would also like to tell you that we have B2B projects, matchmaking projects, virtual projects. This year we will have face-to-face meetings next year. In Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina, some projects will be implemented next month. And we would like to encourage European partners and companies to get involved in our projects. You can find everything on our webpage. Internationalization is key, even among our countries in Latin America. I would like to say hello to our colleagues in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. Thank you, Mercedes, and thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Angel and José Luis. I think the session was very interesting. I've made myself a promise. I'll live until 2050. I don't want to learn about Repsol's decarbonization in 2050. Just joking. Thank you very much. Thank you, Angel. You were right when you said that we always need more time. Let's hope we all live until 2050. We have artificial intelligence that makes everything possible. In any case, be here on time tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you for following us wherever you are. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.